Hello and welcome to our second episode of Straight from the Cockpit. I'm your host, Captain Bermun McGhee. So today we're going to get into some special edition today because of the bombings that happened at the airport in Brussels on yesterday. My condolences to all the families. This is a serious matter. As I mentioned in our first episode, terrorists are testing various soft points in our systems, and these are some of the concerns. So today in our episode, we're going to discuss what's happened there in Brussels, some safety tips for you as the traveler, and just to bring everyone up to speed on what's happening around the world in aviation. Again, welcome to Straight from the Cockpit. Okay, and we're back now, Straight from the Cockpit. I'm your host, Captain Bermun McGhee, and as I was saying before the break, we're going to hop right into our discussion this morning about the Brussels terrorist attack. Lots of information is out there floating around, and a lot of speculation at this point. As always, when things like this happen, we're going to strictly narrow our focus in on what we actually know, and carry that discussion from there. For all of my viewers out there that would like to possibly call in or text in with questions or anything, you're more than welcome. If you are here in Asia, you can text us via +63 949 44 13 3557. And if you're our U.S. viewers, you can call in or text us as well at +1 631 703 0174. So back to our discussion. We know that there were 2 bombs today inside the airport. Sources are reporting that initially that a bomb was exploded there inside the airport near the ticketing counter where people are checking into their flights. This is a soft target. Usually it's where people are congregating because they're waiting in line. This has been one of the concerns I've raised before, and it's actually one of the things that I say actually produces more problems than it does solves, particularly with the security lines. I understand that the idea is to check people and to make sure that no one's coming through with weapons or anything like that, but in the mass protection of trying to have security lines and security protocols, what it has done is it has created a bottleneck, and when you do that, you put a huge amount of people into a safety hazard zone, that I call it, and when that happens, you're making yourself so vulnerable, because the security checkpoint itself has now created a much broader problem, because now someone with a bomb, they don't care about getting to the other side or getting onto the plane. They can induce more mass casualties by doing something like this, get into a crowded area and detonate. So in that aspect, I say to the security forces and to the security teams and security advisors, you should look at a dynamic where you break up these clusters with the security checkpoints, because you're creating more opportunities for terrorists to do bad things. To the passengers, to our passengers, when you're traveling I highly advise that you take your time, as I iterated in our last in our first episode. Uh, be vigilant and talk to the person sitting next to you. That includes even in the waiting area. Even when you're waiting in line, you can kind of get a feel for who's next to you, what their mind state is, and you never know. You could have the difference of changing the mind of someone that's maybe there to do harm. They reconsider or second guess themselves, or you may get a feeling that something's just not right, and then you have an opportunity to bring that to the authorities to let them kind of check the situation out. And unfortunately, we're going to have backlash, just because it's human nature, and everyone with the idea that it's Muslim terrorists, and you're going to have profiling going on. And here's what I'm going to say to that, and I'm saying this coming from the position of a black American that has experienced racial profiling and everything. But I have to say, profiling, it works. I hate to say it, it works. Yes, it's bad. I have mixed feelings about it. I have to be honest about it. But as I've said before, even in private conversations, and I will share this with you, my audience, with racial profiling, and I'll speak to it as from a black American standpoint. When you have a huge proportion of people of color that are selling drugs and doing those type of things, when the police are targeting drugs, they are looking at when they profile, they're looking at the profile that is statistically driven, meaning typically young black Americans in urban environments. Now, I'm not saying that all black Americans are drug dealers or anything like that. I'm just saying the statistics, when you're dealing with drug-related cases, whether it's marijuana, cocaine, crack, different street drugs that are popular among youth, you have a high number, and now the numbers are actually starting to level out, that it's kind of even across the field of all races. But before, in the late 80s and 90s, it was typically in the urban, poor black neighborhoods. So that's where the racial profiling came in with for drugs. And I would say, if I was a detective or a police officer, and I was on a drug task force, you would look at someone and profile them based on what they look like, and all of those things go into profiling. And dealing with drugs, black Americans were profiled and automatically assumed that, hey, they're probably carrying drugs. Let's take them aside and question them. In that aspect, I recognize that it disrupts and it makes people uncomfortable, but at the same time, you have to fight a crime, and if that's the demographic of trying to curb it, then by all means do it, even if it makes me uncomfortable. If they stop me and question me just because I'm young and I'm black, and they think I could possibly be carrying drugs, and they profiled me and they're wrong, then hey, at least they did their job of trying to curb it, and it puts in the mind of everyone, including the criminal, hey, I know I'm young, I know I'm black, I probably shouldn't be dealing with drugs because I'm going to get hassled. So it tends to push a positive aspect to curb the drug selling and things like that. Does it solve it? No. Is it wrong? My instincts is to say it's a yes and no. Some because you have good and bad cops. You're going to have some people that are really just doing the wrong thing and, going after people beyond just racial profiling. So in that aspect, I say it depends on the department that implements it and how they handle profiling. Now, I was speaking to it as what I've experienced as a Black American, and I'm going into this with profiling of Muslims that are traveling throughout the world. I'm sorry, but the issue is that it's the Muslim radicals that are going out, blowing up airplanes, buildings, now in the airport and a subway. So in your community, you have to embrace that there's going to be some backlash, there's going to be some profiling going on, and I'm saying to the good Muslims out there that understand, not all Muslims are bad. I understand that, but at the same time, you got to say someone has to say, hey, this particular sector of 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 this religion, and I'm the radicals. There's no way to weed them out other than, hey, we know that that the if you're from a particular segment in the Middle East, that there's been a lot of radicals coming out of there, and at the same time, we on the outside, for lack of understanding and lack of knowledge, we can't really distinguish a radical Muslim from a normal practice Muslim, and we don't. And I say for my own self that there's a lack of understanding of the ideologically why someone wants to put on a bomb, go out and hurt innocent people, and that's good for your religion. So in that aspect of it, you're going to have a lot of uncomfortableness of people on the outside of your religion. When they're traveling, they're going to look at people. They're gonna look at you. They're gonna always have that thought in their head: are you about to do something wrong? Are you about to hurt us? And that's just the initial feeling after something like this happens. And looking at it from the aspect that it's the radical Muslims that are doing this. You don't have. For example, you don't have you don't have a Buddhist that's going out blowing up airports and airplanes and things. You don't. You're not seeing other demographics, and that's what I want to explain. It's really honed in on a specific demographic, and when it does that, the unintended consequences are going to surround everyone that's a part of that demographic. So I would say, please understand, talk to your fellow Muslims and even to non-Muslims to help understand what's going on, and stress that, hey, you understand that, hey, it's coming from a radical section of our religion, and you want to be a part of the solution, not of the problem. So that is our Straight from the Cockpit segment for today, sponsored to you by Redtail Aviation Holdings, and we will continue this discussion. Please call in, text with any questions or any comments. We will try to implement them in our next episode. And stay tuned for our next segment, Cabin Chat. Hello and welcome back. I'm your host, Captain Bermun McGhee, and this is our segment of Cabin Chat. So we're just going to talk about what's everyone's just kind of chattering about amongst themselves in the cabin. And I have to say that because of the recent event of the bombing in Brussels, that is the main chatter in the cabin. Everyone's worried when they're traveling. And as I reiterate the safety component, and that's just to be vigilant. I'm going to be respectful of the families of lost ones, of the injured, and we're going to keep this segment about them, about what the next steps are for those people of tragedy. Please, send out your thoughts and prayers to them. And keep in mind that life has been lost. It's very precious. Children, elderly, please be aware when you're in the airports. Anytime you're traveling and there's large crowds, be vigilant of what's around you. If something looks strange, speak up about it. Let law enforcement know, or any security personnel know if you feel something's not right. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, something's not right here. So that concludes our edition of Cabin Chat this week. And as always, safe travels. I'm Captain Bermun McGhee. Thank you for watching Straight from the Cockpit.